Our sermon scripture today is Matthew 14, 28, and 29. There's a whole section we're dealing with, and we're going to be bebopping in and out of it in different sections. And here's what today has for us. Remember, this is Peter walking on the water. Jesus comes out in the middle of a storm walking on the water. Peter takes a few steps on the water. Of course, he sinks. We know the story, but here's a portion of that story. And Peter speaking says, "Lord, if it's you," Peter replied, "tell me to come to you on the water." "Come," he said. And then Peter got down out of the boat and walked on the water and came toward Jesus. It's amazing. Every time I read through this story, it's always amazing. You know, excuse me. We're looking through our new series, and it's called If You Want to Walk on Water, You Got to Get Out of the Boat. And this was a book written by John Ortberg, and it was a number of years ago, at least 10, 12, 15 years ago. And it was kind of had an impact on my life and how I viewed some things. So I thought, I want to come up with a sermon series about this, and well, here it is. It's all before us. And really, it's a series helping us reach our full potential as the followers of Jesus and as the church itself to reach its full potential of who we are supposed to be. Because I believe that we are, I don't know if anybody else feels this way, I believe that we are literally standing on a precipice of a spiritual adventure and of spiritual growth. And all it's going to take is us to take that step of faith out into it. It might seem risky and scary, but if we take that step of faith and we do what God is asking us to do, and we step out of those comfort zones, I think we will be more than we've ever been before. And that gets me excited to even think about it. It's exciting stuff. Now, last week, when we started, we talked a little bit about fear. We talked a little bit about overcoming our fear. We talked about our safe places, those places that we're afraid to step out of. We asked, hey, what's your boat? What's the thing that you're hiding in instead of stepping out where Jesus is calling us to go? And I finished up, I guess I'd say, with some general observations about water walking. And I promised I was going to have a few more observations about water walking for us today. Now, as we look at these things, I'm not just taking this passage and breaking it down line by line and in order and saying this is how things went, but we're looking at this thing as a whole. And I'm coming at it from just different angles and different views to say, this is what's happening. How does this affect our life? How can we grow in the midst of seeing what happened in this picture? So it's not just going to be line by line and in order, but we're going to look at a lot of different aspects of this scripture for us today. But here are some more general observations about water walking. I call it water walking because Peter walked on the water, and I hope that we can be water walkers. Number one, water walkers learn to manage failure and move forward. And this is going to be an important one that we get to. Remember, Peter steps out of the boat. He walks on water. He sees the wind. He sees the waves. He begins to fear. He has doubt within his life and everything that's happening there, and Peter sinks. The question is, did Peter fail? Now, last week I said this: failure is simply a judgment about an event or an outcome to say whether it was failure or success. We're going to go back to school. Everybody ready? Oh, okay. Jonas Salk. Talk about history, talk about science. Jonas Salk was the one who basically invented the polio vaccine, changed countless lives through this, okay? Joseph Salk had 200 unsuccessful vaccines that he put together. And one day, someone came up to him and said, "What does it feel like to fail 200 times?" And his answer was, "I didn't fail 200 times. I just found 200 ways not to vaccinate against polio." See the perspective? It's completely different. Winston Churchill. Winston Churchill repeated a year in grade school. Do you know that? Interestingly enough. One day they came up to him and they asked him, "What did it feel like to fail when you were in grade school?" And Winston Churchill said this: "I have never failed at anything. I was given a second opportunity to get it right." See, isn't that a great way to think of it? So failure is about perspective. We put a judgment on the outcome, but it's not always the way it needs to be. Where Some of those who are here go to martial arts, Star Martial Arts. They have a wonderful saying. It says, "My child never fails. They win or succeed, or they learn." Whole different perspective. So Peter steps out of a boat. He takes some steps on the water, and he stumbles. And he sinks. Did Peter fail? To me, I think the ones who failed were the ones who didn't get out of the boat. That was failing. See, Peter, even though he stumbled, he knew two things incredibly well. Number one, he knew what it was like to walk on water. Okay, nobody else knows how that feels other than Jesus. He knows what it's like to walk on water. That's pretty powerful. And number two, he knows what it feels like to take a risk and to do something that he could have never done on his own, but with trust in Jesus, he was able to accomplish it. That's powerful stuff. Powerful stuff. See, failure is not stumbling and sinking in the waves. Failure is not getting out of the boat. So my question on this is, where is God teaching you to manage failure? Or maybe fear in your life, the fear of failure. Maybe it's risk. Where's God teaching you to manage taking a risk in your life? Number two, water walkers see risk or even sinking as an opportunity to grow. Peter sinks. Jesus rescues him. Jesus pinpoints the problem immediately. Now, Jesus says this to Peter as he's out there in the water. We don't know if the other disciples heard or not, but Jesus wasn't trying to embarrass Peter when he said this. But you see, Peter sinks, Jesus pulls him back up, and he says this to Peter. He says, "Peter, why you have such little faith? Why did you doubt?" I mean, you began to take steps, man. You were walking on the water. Why did you begin to doubt? You were right there. That's all right. We're going to move past this, and you're going to grow, and we're going to go to the places where we need to go. In fact, in the next, not this next week, but in 2 weeks, when I'm back to give a message, we're going to talk about this 4 times in the book of Matthew. Jesus says this phrase, "Why of little faith?" And we're going to see what that means, that little idea of little faith. See, what Jesus is saying is, Peter, here's the problem. You doubted and you feared, and that overcame the faith that you had. Because that's how reality works. Now listen to this statement. Whether Peter walked on the water or whether he sank depended entirely upon his focus on Jesus and faith or his focus upon fear and doubt in the situation. Everybody get a hold of that? That's enough truth right there to change your life forever. Everybody get a hold of that? Did you hear it? Whether Peter walked on water or sank depended entirely upon his focus on Jesus and his faith in Jesus when he walked on the water, or his focus upon fear and doubt and the wind and the waves and the problems, and then he sank. Which one are we doing within our lives? Where is our focus? Where are we going? In stepping out and sinking, Peter now understands better than he ever had and better than he ever could have his need, his deep need for dependence upon faith in Jesus and his focus to stay upon Jesus. Peter got the object lesson of a lifetime. Can you imagine? This is you, okay? You're the one. Imagine you're Peter right now. Wind, waves, it's crazy out there. You're trying to keep the boat afloat, okay? You're afraid it's going to capsize. Jesus says, "Come on out, Peter." And you're like, okay. And you take a step out of boat, okay? And you go down and you hit the water and you don't go in it. I'm focused on Jesus. My faith is right there. It's craziness out here, but right here. He gets about 3 steps out, and what happens? The waves started flying. Oh boy, fear and doubt kicks in. Boom. All right? What an object lesson. Do you think the rest of his life, he's going through life and he's going, this is kind of a scary situation. This is a risky situation. Maybe I better keep my focus on Jesus and my faith instead of looking at the situation. Why? Because I had an object lesson years ago. and it taught me. That could be our object lesson today. The willingness to risk failure and even to fail is what helps us grow. It increases our faith, and it helps us to know Jesus better. How many of you know Sir Edmund Hillary? It's okay if you don't. I know a few of you do. Yoo-hoo. He has credited him and his group as being the first ones to climb Mount Everest. The thing is, he failed many times before he ever got to the top. Many times. And one of those times where he failed, the story is this, that he stood at the very base of that mountain, and he shook his fist and he said, I'm going to conquer you one day. You know why? You're as tall as you're ever going to get, but I'm still growing. If we could do that in our lives, I'm still growing. I might have failed. It's risky, whatever the situation is, but it's an opportunity to grow. And I'm moving forward. And Peter grew that day. He grew because he took a step of faith and he went out there. So where is God teaching you to grow? Where is God teaching you to focus on Jesus and faith? Now, to cut some time out, I cut out the next one, which was about water walkers wait upon God. And we all know that we wait upon God, so we don't have to sit there at 3 o'clock and wait. But we're going to go on to the next one now. Water walkers find a deep connection with Jesus. People who walk on water take that step of faith and do the things we're called have a deep connection with Jesus. In chapter 16, this is just 2 chapters later past here, Jesus is asking, now who do people say I am? And they throw all these things out there. And then he says, but who do you say I am? And Peter, emboldened, stands up and says, you are the Christ, you're the Messiah, you're the very Son of God. And Jesus says, yes. And upon that, right there, I'm going to build my church, and we're going to make things happen. Why is he so emboldened? I think this story right here and many others, Peter said, I learned about Jesus. I grew closer to Jesus, and now I know you are the Christ. You are the Son of God. Because he learned and he grew and he had a connection with Jesus. See, Peter is showing us an obvious truth in the midst of this. Peter got out of the boat because Jesus was on the water and not in the boat. It's kind of obvious, isn't it? It makes sense, right? See, the water must have seemed incredibly dangerous, and it was. But Jesus wasn't in the boat. Jesus was out on the water. So staying in the boat was not the place to be. It seemed safer. It seemed much more comfortable, but it is always better to be where Jesus is. Did everybody hear that? That could change your life again if you just get that statement, okay? I don't care how risky it is. I don't care how dangerous it looks. I don't care how crazy it is. I guarantee you, every single time, it is always better to be where Jesus is than trying to hide in a safe, comfortable place. Anybody else believe that? I don't know. Maybe you do, maybe you don't. But I'm telling you, it's the truth. If I'm in the middle of the storm, you know what? I don't care. I'm going to be right next to Jesus in the middle of it. And if he's standing out in the middle of it, then that's where I'm going to be, because that's the place to be. See, Peter got out of the boat, and because he did so, he and the disciples learned a deeper understanding of who Jesus was. Because they climbed back in the boat and they began to just worship him, because they're like, oh my goodness, you are who you say you are. And I think God's method to help us grow in a deeper relationship is always asking us to step out of the boat. We hear a nice message from a preacher, that's good. We may maybe read a good book, and that's good to help us grow. But real life challenges develop our ability to trust God, and that's where we truly, truly grow. He asks us to step out of the boat. And when you step out of the boat, there's going to be crisis. There's going to be opportunity. There's going to be failure sometimes. There's going to be fear, I think, most every time. Sometimes there's going to be some suffering involved, and it's always going to be calling us to a task that is far too big for us to accomplish on our own, but that's where we grow. Anybody ready to grow a little? The only way to grow is to take that step. So today, here's where we're going to finish up, because we're done with our I guess you would say, our observations from water walking. And we're going to begin to look at this story. And today we're going to look at the very gift that God has given us called life. You see, God's given us this thing called life. He's given us purpose in this world. He's given us purpose in his kingdom. And the goal for us is to step out of the boat. It is to grab it. It is to live it to its fullest potential and to be all that God has created us to be. It's a gift that we are called to live out loud in our lives with everything that we have and everything that we are. It's this gift of life because God's given it to us and we are called to move out with it. Now, John Ortberg tells an amazing story about a gift in his book. It was his grandma Florence. And his grandma Florence had just passed away, and his grandfather was there and called up his mom and dad and said, I've got these old dishes up in the attic that were your mother's, and if you want them, you can have them. If not, I'm just going to give them to Goodwill. So they said, we'll go over there. And they went over there and they looked, and it was the most beautiful and exquisite china that they'd ever seen in their lives. And so his dad said, I've been with her my whole life. I've never seen this. So they asked his grandfather, have you ever seen this? And he's like, no, I've never seen these dishes before. I don't know anything about them. They find out some older family members. When she was a young girl, Grandma Florence, they used to give her this china piece by piece. And it was very exquisite. It was very expensive. And it came from this Bavarian plant that was literally blown up during World War II. So there's no way you could ever get another piece for this thing ever again. Okay? And she thought, this is so expensive. This gift is so precious. I'm just going to have to tuck it away nicely and neatly. And if there's ever a special occasion, we'll take it out for the special occasion. The problem was there was never an occasion special enough to bring it out. So here, her husband for 50, 60 years had never seen this amazing gift. Doesn't that blow you away? The mother says, I'll take it. She took it, and I guess his words were she uses it in just such an amazing way. She says she uses it all the time. I mean, every chance she had, she took out the fine china and she said, here, look at this beautiful, let's eat off it. Woo-hoo. You see, because there's two ways that you can accept a gift. There's two things that you can basically do with a gift and respond. Number one is you say, this gift is so valuable that it cannot be risked. It can't be opened. It can't be used, because if you take that china out of the box, somebody might not use it properly, somebody might drop it, it might get broken. It's just way too valuable. We just have to tuck it away and never use it. Or you can say, this gift is so valuable, it has to be risked. It has to be used. We have got to take it out and open it and use it, because if we don't, we thwart the very reason the giver gave us that gift. Which one are we? God has given us this amazing gift called life and purpose in his kingdom. Are we using that thing? Or are we saying, we need to just tuck this thing away back somewhere in the attic? See, the next message, we're going to be talking about finding that gift and that calling that God's given us and stepping out in faith and what it means to step out in faith and to start doing the things that we're called to do as Jesus stands on the water and says, come, let's make this thing happen. See, Peter chose to step out of the boat. And I believe that as he stepped out of the boat, it was his first steps to living this gift of life to its absolute fullest. Notice Peter didn't ask for a promise. He didn't ask for a guarantee. Okay, if I step out of the boat, make sure I don't sink, make sure there's no problems. He only said, give me a command to come out there. And Jesus said, come on out. And so he steps out and he goes to be with Jesus. Now, the disciples in the boat, they weren't ready to risk stepping out of the boat. They treasured safety and comfort over growth. I think later on in life, they probably learned they needed to step out and risk in faith, and they did so. But the very ultimate adventure of faith, they were going to walk on water just like Jesus was, to live the life to its fullness. And 11 of those disciples were perfectly content to just sit on the sideline in a safe, comfortable place. Where are we? How many of us do that? How many churches do that? God calls us to this incredible adventure in his kingdom and in his kingdom work, and we're just afraid to try. We see risk and we just stay in the boat. Because we think, oh, there's a heavy price we might pay if you step out. It's risky. The problem is you do that, you don't realize there's another heavy cost that can be paid, and it's called the cost of staying in the boat. It's the cost of doing nothing. As John Ortberg says, and he titles this, he calls it being a boat potato instead of a couch potato. You just kind of sit there in the boat. You just don't do anything. So what would be the high cost of not doing anything? Here's what I see. It's unrealized potential. It's unfulfilled purpose. It's our abilities and gifts never cultivated or used to their ultimate good. It's harmful patterns of behavior within our lives that we never confront or change. We just let them go. It's about powerful prayers that are never going to be prayed. It's risks that are never taken. It's sacrificial gifts that could change lives that are never given. It's lives never touched. It's needs never met. It's being a part of something much bigger than myself, a part of something that is God inspired and God planned, and we don't do it. We sit comfortably in a boat. See, to me, it is a much bigger price to pay to not do anything than to have fear and possible failure. Anybody else agree with that? I don't know. Maybe some of you are sitting back saying, I think the boat is nice and comfortable. I just redid it. I got a lazy boy in it now, and it's just really nice. I'm not really hoping to step out and do anything. And you can believe that. You can do that. But you're going to miss your potential. You're going to miss the very purpose God put you right here on this earth, and you're going to miss all the adventure that's out there hiding. It's your choice. See, that's why we had the parable of the talents. Remember the parable of the talents that was kind of read, portion of it to you? A very, very, very wealthy man. I mean, this is Bill Gates' wealth today and beyond, okay? This is like billions, okay, and billions that this person has. And so he steps up into his servants. He says, oh, you get 5 talents, chunks of money. You get 2 and you get 1. Go out and here's your chance, man. This is a chance of a lifetime. Literally, go out there and just do what you're going to do, man. I'm giving you this blessing, and go out there and make something happen. And the one who has 5 gets 5 more. The one who has 2, he gets 2 more. The one who has 1, he buries it, right? Why did he bury it? I was afraid. See, I think Jesus reveals 3 things in this parable. Number 1, God is the Lord of the gift. He's the Lord of the gift. Each of the 3 are given the talents, which is just an amazing chance of a lifetime given to them. See, God entrusts his property to you and me. God trusts this gift to you and me. And I think we're equipped and we're expected to contribute. What do we give our lives for? I mean, literally, what are we living for right now? Are we living for the things of a fallen, broken world? We're trying to, well, if I can just get a little more, I can get that boat. I can just maybe get that bigger house. I can just get that thing over here. I can just get another toy in my garage. Is that our purpose in life? If that's your purpose, you've missed it completely. Because the purpose is the gift God's given you and living it to its fullness. Will we bury that gift, or are we going to use it to the full potential? Number 2, God is also the Lord of settled accounts. I like this. The Lord's going to come back and settle accounts. He gives out these gifts, these talents, and he expects them to be faithful. And he comes back and says, okay, let's settle the accounts. What's happened here so far? Are we using our gifts and talents? Are we using the gift that God's given us? Or are we not? And if we're not, what's your excuse? The blame game, we're good at this in our culture. We blame everybody else but ourselves. Oh, it's this thing, it's that thing, it's this, it's that. There's no way. Bad excuse. You've been given something by God, use it. Maybe it's the kind of the when-then theme. Well, when this finally happens, then maybe I can get, bad excuse. Are you rationalizing burying a gift and sitting in a boat? See, the one who buried the talent had an excuse. He said, I was afraid. I let fear take over. Fear makes you bury gifts and stay in boats. But it's not an adequate excuse. See, when the master came back, remember that servant wasn't judged for doing bad things. He didn't go out and say, well, you embezzled my money. You went out and stole from me. He doesn't say you went out and recklessly spent my money. He went out and said, you did nothing. And that's maybe the worst thing you could have done. Inactivity. And he calls him a choice word, lazy. I gave you so much and you're lazy. You're not using it. And finally, the Lord is the Lord of the reward as well. Because he says, well done, good and faithful servant. You've been trustworthy with a few things. Now it's a chance to be put in charge of many more things. You see, it's more responsibility, greater things, more fun, better times. And investing in the kingdom of God is the greatest opportunity you're ever going to know. Because God has given us amazing things to use. And if we take the steps of faith, if we risk, if we keep our eyes on Jesus, God is going to do amazing things through them.